Well, cyberbullying affects many people on social media, as we know, especially teenagers. Here to talk about its impact on our youth and how we can help them is clinical psychologist Dr. Goli Sadibachi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Appreciate you being here this morning. This is such
Thank
a relevant topic right now because we are starting to learn as social media is becoming this dominant force.
Oh, absolutely.
How it's affecting all of us, especially our teens, which includes creating a lot of anxiety.
Exactly. So anxiety, depression, self-esteem issues, those are all on the rise. And a lot of that really is coming from the social media because they're going on, people are being mean to each other, people are comparing themselves. It's very common. We talk about Facebook depression. That's been something that's been around for about 10, 15 years now. And so, but with teens, they're just so vulnerable, you know, and they're kind of trying to make sense of all this technology.
Because they're really trying to learn about that inner confidence, and then they have this outside force that is really bringing in all those negative feelings. And unfortunately, as a consequence of that, we are seeing suicide rates.
We are. Cyberbullying is huge. Self-harm. I mean, I never knew until I heard from my patients that there's accounts that people tell you how to harm yourself, or people saying you should kill yourself. And we've had so many reports of this, and it's devastating. So this is a huge problem, and I think a lot of times parents need to get more involved. You know, they're kind of afraid of, how do I assert my power? Should I take the phone away? Should I not? What should I do with the social media? But it's also tough because, for example, like with Instagram, a lot of them will have a Sinsta or a secondary account that the parent doesn't know about.
Yes.
So even if parents are followers on Facebook or Twitter or what have you, they don't always know what's going on.
So how can parents gain control of this and figure out how to encourage their kids to take a step back, as you call it?
Absolutely. So I oftentimes talk about a digital detox. I talk about having a sabbatical altogether, or even just having a tech-free weekend. So I say, you know, when you go camping, oftentimes you don't even have cell reception. So go off of everything and see what it's like. Allow your teens to have hobbies and to read and music, literature, all of that. You know, these are things that I think would be really good for them, but they oftentimes get so caught up in being on their devices all of the time that just taking a step back can be a huge first step.
And parents have to also set an example in that way, right?
That's
we can't
key.
tell our kids not to be on their phones if we're on our phones at dinner.
Oh, absolutely. And I talk about having a family culture, right? And in my book, I have this whole thing about a family pledge where everyone sits down and says, this is what I'm going to do, right? Because mom might say, well, I'm reading the newspaper on my Kindle, and dad's saying, well, I'm doing this on my phone, I'm doing work emails. So if you're in front of them, that's not an ideal situation for your teen.
You also say to encourage replacement of necessary apps, functions of phones. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. So the first thing that every time I say, take the teen's phone away, they say, but I need it for my alarm clock. Right? They say, that's how I wake up. And I say, well, what did we do 10 years ago, right? We had our regular old-fashioned alarm clock. So having, instead of the GPS, have a map. Instead of having, you know, your phone to take a picture, get an old-fashioned camera. These are all little steps in the right direction, so we're not so addicted to having the device in our hands all the time.
So find the replacement for the excuse that they're giving
Exactly.
you.
There's always an excuse, right?
I like that. And you also say that once teens start taking control of their device usage, you'll start to automatically notice a better sense of focus for them, and their scores will go up at school.
Absolutely. So much better for schoolwork. Oftentimes, you know, when you really check and see how much time they spent online, they'll often say 6 to 8 hours just on their device. And these are the same kids that are failing in school oftentimes. And so it's not that they, you know, have a learning disability, or there's a lot of parents freak out about that, right? They say, does my kid have ADHD? The device is almost giving you ADHD in a way when you're constantly switching back and forth between I'm doing my term paper, now I'm FaceTiming with somebody, now I'm going to update my Twitter. That's a lot of stuff that they're managing. So taking that all off, you know.
As a clinical psychologist, you see just a range of patients that are dealing with different experiences of how social media is affecting your patients personally.
Absolutely.
Do you see a bigger, wider concern, long-term trend down the road that it's just we're going too far one way, and it's hard to kind of pull in the reins?
I think so, and I think a lot of people are going off of social media, you know, and I oftentimes talk to people about just getting rid of a few, right? So I went off of Facebook. I said, you know, Facebook was just getting too complicated. You've got your high school teachers on there, and you've got your cousins on there. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to do Twitter, and I'm going to stick with that. So I think everyone is kind of getting to a point where it feels like it's too much. You know, they talk about a lot of millennials who are now moms on social media. And so now that's kind of this new thing of motherhood on social media and the comparisons and vacations. And a lot of people are not really happy being on their social media. And when they take a step back, they say, actually, I'm getting back to my old life again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we are 10 years from now.
Absolutely.
All right, Dr. Bocci, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll